Today we're going to show you how we can clean up this engine bay for under about $200. Right now it's got really ugly wiring, old engine, just kind of looks like a beater, right? So let's see what we can do in a day or two, and 200 bucks. This is my son's car, so we're going to enlist his help today. Ready to do this? Yeah. So this is what we're starting with here. 64 Chevelle. Dirty, gunky engine bay, wires just kind of flopping about, greasy engine, again wires kind of just everywhere, not too sexy at the moment. So for under $200 we were able to buy these Edelbrock valve covers for about 50 bucks. Got some new spark plug wires, 40 bucks. Valve cover gaskets, and a few accessories. First step, we're going to take some engine cleaner and spray all the greasy areas to soak this thing, cut into a lot of that old grease and dirt. Get a little bit of it everywhere, except for not in the carburetor, and let's try to keep the distributor dry. Getting this thing soaked is really going to help us to spray and cut through the grease. Today we're using Gunk engine degreaser. You can get it at most common auto parts stores. Next we're going to start to rinse off the engine, clean up around the fender wells, really hose off all of this engine cleaner we've put on here, try to blast away a lot of the soot and the dirt. Obviously trying to keep water out of the carburetor where possible, and again not get the distributor soaking wet. Just get the top layer off so we can actually get down to the next level so we can get after sanding and cleaning it up for paint. Let's take these spark plug wires off, kick them out of here along with some of this other scrap wiring. I cut the heater hoses already, so I'm going to go ahead and remove the hose clamps, replace them later, get the remnants of the old hose clamps off. We just loosened the valve covers, so we're going to go ahead and remove the valve covers. And also I think we'll take off the carburetor so we can get better access here to paint the top of the engine. Overall, if we get these heater hoses out of the way, get the rest of the wiring out, we'll have great access to get started. Here's a good shot of where we're at now. So we got the heater hoses off, kind of all the extracurricular stuff out of the way. We're getting good access at the engine, so we can start cleaning it up and painting it up. Now that we have a lot of the stuff off the engine and we've been kind of scraping it, we're going to use a little bit of brake parts cleaner, is what I prefer to use. So we can spray around in these areas. It just helps to get a little bit more of that dirt off. And it'll evaporate. So if you just wipe it down when you're done. You also might see here that we've got the water pump off. We found that we had a bad water pump, so you don't have to do this as part of a detail job, but we'd be foolish not to change it while we're in here. Right now I'm going to start applying a few coats of my duplicolor engine color, Chevy orange. So some gloves and a little paper is always nice not to get stuff on everything. So just a few light coats to get started. We'll just get the paint to stick. We'll go over this a number of times and we'll see what it looks like. Stay tuned. Next thing to address is all this ugly wiring you can see on the firewall. It's just what we would call a rat's nest. So what I'm going to do is pull the different wires apart that I can and get some quality electrical tape, and we're just going to gently spiral the wires. If you have any loose wires, any cut or damaged wires, make sure to trim those back first, but this will allow you to get a cleaner looking harness. You're good. Now that we've got a bunch of the wiring and crap out of the way, we're working on masking and sanding. So we're using a combination of 240 grit sandpaper. We're not trying to go too rough. And then scotch brite pads. And then not going for perfection. We're just trying to get the dirt and scum off and get some black paint on here. But we want to get it clean and as smooth as we can so we make sure it'll stick. So I've got Jackson working away. Since this is his car, he's got to put some elbow grease in. Got to have a little skin in the game. We're ready to spray some paint. I'm gonna go with a quality paint. SEM Trim Black is phenomenal. It spreads really well. It's professional grade. Make sure you shake it up a bunch. And I'm just gonna start with some light dusting. You really just wanna get light coats down the first couple times so you get kind of a paint layer. A piece of cardboard is a great friend so you can get in little areas like this. I'll just take it around with me and go to different spots. Again, I'm just kind of roughing everything out first. Later, I think I'll try to clean this trim tag up a little bit. We'll see what we can do there. Our friend again right here is a great shield. So instead of making you watch every single coat of paint, we'll tune back in here in just a moment. Anytime I use these inexpensive valve covers, they're just chrome and made out of tin. So I want to make sure my gasket sticks to them really well. So I'll get some kind of a sander or a grinder, and you'll see I'll de-shine the surface, so when I glue my valve cover on, it'll actually stick. So that's a pro tip for you right there. So you'll see here what I'm doing. I'm just putting some quality silicone sealer on the bottom side of the valve cover. I'm gonna glue my gasket to the cover. I prefer to use a cork gasket. I find that if I glue it to the cover, then I can remove it later off the car, attached to the cover should I ever need to. Plus, it promotes sealing. Take special note if you're a small block Chevy user that there's double holes on one side of the gasket. Make sure you put those to the top. They're originally there for cars that had a different pattern, bolt pattern. And if they're on the bottom, you could imagine they would just be a source of a leak. So I'll get it set up like that. I'll usually put my bolts through it to hold the gasket in place and then set it on itself and let it sit so that it can set the gasket up before I install them later on the car. Right now, as we start getting the valve covers secured down, you'll notice I've done a couple things like I told you. I was gonna put spreaders on here that help spread the torque to tighten the cover down right. But also, I'm kind of fanatical about clamps, brackets, so I wanna make sure my fuel line is held up off the intake manifold and secure so it can't hit anything. I'm gonna be replacing all of my hose clamps. All my heater hose clamps are gonna get changed, and I'm gonna use these nice insulated rubber clamps to do things like wires that are down there, anything that has a chance of hitting something. So when a wire is tucked out of the way, it's safe, reliable, and looks good. All right, we're almost a wrap. Valve covers are on, pulleys are back on, hose clamps, new heater hoses, paint's looking good. Let's get the plug wires on, finish up the loose ends, and we'll wrap this up. All right, I thought I was gonna do this yesterday, but I had the wrong spark plug wire, so I had to wait another day. But this is the finishing touch here on the 327. So all in all, it's pretty impressive how $200 can completely clean up the engine bay. This thing went from barn find to a respectable, decent looking setup under the hood, right? We did the Edelbrock valve covers. We already had the air cleaner before, so we put a decal on there. Put new hose clamps on all our hoses, put new heater hoses on, sanded the fender wells, pressure washed the engine and sprayed it orange. Cleaned up a bunch of the wiring and did a wire tuck. If you remember the pictures before, the wiring was everywhere. Replaced the spark plug wires and secured them nicely. So right now I think we've got a pretty nice setup. Here's a quick rundown of the parts and materials we used on this $200 engine detail project. It all starts with buying the right car. Check out the link below for my inspection checklist and buying guide to help save you money on your next car purchase.